Before we get started, I'd like to ask you a question that you might not have considered before. Should you be walking down the middle of a hallway as you traverse it, or should you be off to the side? Forgive the pun, but technically speaking, hallways are pretty straightforward. However, if we look at them in a more tactical sense, it's clear that there's more going on than meets the eye. Is it actually as simple as an either or? Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are, but for now, let's jump into some of the dangers that hallways present to us. Now, I don't know if I should be proud that we're moving from digital paper to physical paper, but it's kind of special paper. We can write on it and erase it, so I don't know, maybe that is an improvement. Let's see what you guys think. Guess this would be a good time to let you know that I am not an artist by any means, and nor have I ever claimed to be. So the fact that I'm doing this for you guys, it's because I love you. Oh, that's nice and smeary, eh? Oh, beautiful. There's no Control Z. Where's the Control Z? So we're going to start with the simple scenario of we've got one door coming up on the right hand side. Now again, I'm going to pose this question to you because I want you to keep thinking as we're going over this how you would be approaching these situations and what we can do to better ourselves. We've got a few positions available to us if we want to be in the dead middle of the hallway or if we want to be justified towards one of the edges. This is a pretty narrow hallway. Let's say it's about a meter and a half wide. So we've probably only got realistically 5 positions that we could be in. We could be dead center, kind of offset, right against the wall, and then the same thing on the other side. So as you can see here, from the middle position, we're actually able to scratch some information from the inside of the room before we've actually gotten to it. This is very useful to us because in this specific case, we've seen a wall. So now we know that our main area of threat has to be in this direction. You've got a better view into rooms the further you are away from the wall where the door is. As you can see, when you're far away from the wall where the door is, you can see much further into the room. And this does give you a lot more information to work with. Now, on the contrary, there's a good chance you can't even see into the room if you're too close to the wall where the door is. So what does this mean? Well, we also have to consider this from the other perspective. Forgot to close my window, my bad. So what we also need to consider is what happens if there is an enemy in this room somewhere. Well, let's say he was right about here. This enemy also has sight lines out to us, but you'll notice that we don't technically cross into their sight line until about here. Now, what's very important about the positions that aren't right up against the wall is that they have a little bit of leeway. So in the event that we do come up against this contact, we want to make sure that we have space to maneuver around so we're not just trapped against the physical structure around us. As an example, if we're at this position here, they have us trapped in this little cone. This technique works both ways because ultimately what we're doing once we get to these positions is we're trapping them in progressive angles within the room. Had we been over here, our only choice to break contact would have been to go directly backwards, giving up space that we had already technically taken over. And you need to be considerate of these angles as you're progressing through hallways. Now that's a lot of information to take in, so let me summarize this a little bit. Let's say we've taken this middle lane, the route that most people will take, and as we've discussed on the channel before, is the kind of slicing the pie technique, and you want to make sure that you're keeping spacing off the doorway so you've got that freedom of movement and it allows you better angles as you're traversing. Now right from this point, we've got dominance across there. Once we cross the 90 threshold, we're starting to take over this section of the room and know that the top half is clear. And then as we progress, we clear most of it. Then as you might recall, we come around here, snap the 90 again to get visual of the final angle that we haven't seen yet. It's super important that you leave a little bit of room to fall back or to the side if needed. This is one of the main problems with being this close to the wall, is that if something does come out and it's got visual range down that hallway, you are now trapped in this tiny little sliver of real estate. And if they decide to push that threshold, they only have to search this area to find you. And if they've gotten this far already, then they've got control over the vast majority of this hallway. And the only way you can take it over is by pushing towards one of these middle dots that forces them back into the room slightly and gives you the leeway you need to start doing these techniques. That right there is the main point of contention, and both players are going to be fighting to try to control this area. But if you're mindful of how much of an advantage it gives you to control, you'll remember that you're not going to trap yourself in these small areas moving up. Wow, what a mess. All right, I won't lie, the computer stuff was a little easier, but this is more fun. What do you guys think? Now, one other reason that we need to make sure that we're staying away from the wall, let's say we're trying to get the most angles possible. So we're set up over here, going really wide, as opposed to if we were back here. Let's say we get ambushed as we're coming up here. This guy fires a shot and misses right. It's hitting that wall and it's coming right to us. Even if it's a ricochet, even if it doesn't count, this is something that is going to happen. If this same scenario happens shooting at this guy and he misses right, that shot doesn't even come close. The ricochet is way behind him at this point. Hallways are very dangerous because of this, and this isn't the only angle that it's a threat, especially if there's someone further up the hallway. It doesn't take much to get a ricochet to come towards you. However, if you're in the middle, you're likely not going to get a ricochet until way back here. Yeah, you can't even see where I'm referencing. It's not even on the map. And I just want to make something clear. I understand that ricochets don't count as hits in a lot of places, but as an experienced player, what I can say is I don't even know half the time if it was a ricochet. If I get hit by a BB, I usually just call hit if I'm not sure, especially if those are the rules. Ultimately, what we're trying to do here is reduce the amount of times that we get hit. And technically speaking, this is how you do it. Let's throw a wrench into all of that work and add another door on the other side. And sure, we're lucky enough that if we've got the right angle, we can see that there's a back wall there. I'll be nice. All right, same scenario as before. What's the game plan here? I'll let you think about that one for a minute. It's actually pretty straightforward. It's the same thing, but ultimately we want to do more of a zigzag pattern to control the area. Now, while I did say you don't want to get too close to a wall, what we're going to be doing is dedicating ourselves to one room and then the other. We need to think about a kind of worst case scenario. Let's say we've got two enemies like this. Now, what you'll see here is there is a slight gap in their visions. And this is where they don't overlap. This area up here is completely controlled by them because they've got visuals on both sides. Now, contrary to what I said in the last lesson, you'll see that this is actually the safest spot for us to engage only one of the enemies, but we have to do it quickly. The more time that we spend in this triangle, the more time they're going to spend moving upwards and trying to close that gap on us and eventually force us down that little sliver again. Let's say we're going to tackle this guy on the left first. We're going to move off to the side. Try to keep a little bit of spacing against the wall, but ultimately the closer you are to this wall, the better you're going to be able to hide from him initially. The good thing about this is because we've dedicated ourselves to that direction, we know that if there is an enemy there, we've got plenty of space to fall backwards. So if we get to here, snap look, take him out, then we've only got this guy to worry about. We're going to assume he's now been triggered, and he's going to take a step forward to try to get a visual on us. We're still here, we're just looking in that direction. As you can see, the noose is starting to close and he's starting to control more and more of this hallway as we stand there. Now, assuming we are able to get that kill, we have to realize that we've put ourselves in that dangerous position that we discussed before, where we do not want to be against the wall. So now, as soon as we're able to take that guy out, or at the very least clear that angle, then we can do the same thing with this room. But we want to fall back and kind of switch so we can do it from the other direction. So we've got the advantage again. That way they can't keep pushing us back. If we start crossing this threshold on this angle, we can start to regain dominance over the room. It's getting a little scratched up there, but you can kind of see what I mean. As we fall back, we start to get more dominance over the room from these wider positions, and it allows us to control more and not get so pinned down in these small areas that we discussed before. Now, at this point, we'll cross around and deal with that threat. Now, I'm going to clean this up a little bit. We've got this similar problem that we've discussed before when you're entering a room where you have to check both sides at the same time. We've discussed exactly how to do that on a previous video. If you haven't seen that, I will link that in the description. But what we're going to do is we're going to snap around here, recheck both directions. Because we started with this room over here, there's a couple of reasons that we want to do it next. As we fanned around here to check this room, it's put us closer to this doorway and it's reduced our reaction time. As well, we've now had our back face to that area as we were clearing there. So it's good to do an orientation check, and since we're so close, we can just snap around here, deal with that corner, and then progress to deal with this corner. Because ultimately, these are the only areas that we haven't cleaned at that point. And when you're done, just head this way for victory. Now, this is one-man room clearing, and I've only really discussed two scenarios. There is so much more that goes into all of this. Let me ask you this. What do you think of these tactics? Are these anything like what you use on the field? Or maybe we're just not even close? If you think we're completely off base, then let us know, because we want to make sure that we're using the combined knowledge of the entire Airsoft community to allow for some of the best educational lessons available. Well, as always, thank you so much for your time. Class is dismissed. Oh God, it looks demonic. Get rid of it. Oh God, at least I can't unsee it.